introduce our next speaker to everybody. It takes a lot of guts to step forward and talk about any type of paranormal experience, going from UFOs to out-of-body to reincarnation. Our next speaker, Robert Snow, has been a homicide police officer, detective, for 32 years. Nothing but the facts, ma'am. And he ended up, through a fluke, through a dare, going to a regression session. And what he found out in that session, what he experienced, he then investigated using all of the talents of 30 years of police work. And ladies and gentlemen, what that investigation showed to him and proved to him is that he lived another life as Carroll Beckwith. And his book is Searching for Carroll Beckwith. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Snow.
Good morning. As the introduction said, I'm a police officer in Indianapolis. I'm a captain, police captain. I'm actually in charge of the homicide branch in Indianapolis. And believe me, in Indianapolis, I'm the last person you want to look up and see standing over you. It's going to be a bad day. But, you know, I've been a police officer for 32 years, and I've had a lot of success in the police department. I'm a police captain. Previously was the department executive officer. I've been in charge of planning. I was administrative assistant to the chief of police. I've had a lot of success, but actually, I never wanted to be a cop. That thought never really, when I was growing up, that thought never crossed my mind. I never had any desire to be a cop or a fireman or a cowboy or astronaut, what all little boys want to be. The only thing I ever really wanted to be was a writer. From my very earliest memories, all I wanted to be was a writer. Well, of course, wanting to be a writer and actually being a writer, anybody who's ever tried it knows, are two very, very different things. And it's very fortunate that I fell into police work by accident, because it's nice to be a writer, but it's nicer to have something to write about that people care about. And police work is one of those things. And actually, I have written a number of things about police work. I've written five books about police work, and I've had probably 100 articles and short stories published all about police work. Everything I've written, except my latest book, is about police work. I wrote books on protecting yourself, protecting your property, stopping a stalker, combating family abuse, and everything to do with police work. So this has been quite a rapid departure for me. But you know, to be a good writer, you also have to be a good reader. You have to read all the time. You just can't write, you have to read. You have to read constantly. And you have to read things that are not necessarily in your field, but you have to read things that other people have written, just to see what's being written, how it's written, people's style and everything. So I've always been a very, very avid reader. And well, because of this, I belong naturally to several book clubs. So, gosh, about 5 or 6 years ago, I saw a blurb in the book club for a book called Coming Back. It's by Dr. Raymond Moody, it said. The blurb said, that who had previously investigated near-death experiences. And this book Coming Back, he was talked about being hypnotically regressed to past lives. Now, let me tell you, I don't really get much. At that time, I thought, you know, but again, I've read books on Satanism and international terrorism and, you know, Zen Buddhism, and I don't necessarily believe in any of that either. But you still got to read things by other people, and I find different ideas like this interesting, only because you wonder why people believe in this sort of thing. So anyway, I ordered the book, and it was, if I don't know if anybody's read the book or not, by Dr. Moody called Coming Back. It's a very good book. It's a well-written, very good book about how he goes to a friend of his who's a psychologist. She hypnotizes him and takes him back to 9 past lives he's supposed to have lived. And it was very well-written, very colorful, but kind of interesting. At the end, he kind of hedges a bit and says he don't really know what this was. He doesn't really know if this was past lives or just his imagination. And I have to admit with you, I agreed. I mean, what does it mean? I mean, it's okay, you say, like when I was, back in China, but where do you know where these memories come from? So for the most part, I thought it was an interesting book, and I forgot about it. I just, went on to other reading. Well, a couple months after that, I was at a party. My wife is a police officer also. She's at this time was a child abuse detective. And the Family Advocacy Center in Indianapolis, which handles child abuse cases, was having a party. And her and I went. And I was there talking to people, and I was talking to a lady who's a psychologist. And we were just making a little chit chat as we had people do. We were talking about what movies we'd seen and things we'd done. When we started talking about books we'd read, and I remember when she's a psychologist, I mentioned the book Coming Back. Well, at the time, I didn't know that she used hypnotic regression therapy in her practice. I had no idea this, and she asked me, "Well, what'd you think of the book?" And I'd probably had a little too much to drink. It was late in the party, so you know how people are. You kind of sarcastic and said, "Nah, it's kind of silly." I said, "This is a bunch of weak people who are looking for excuses to blame things on." I said, "This is people who just want to, basically want to say, well, gee, this is because I'm this problem. It's not my fault. It's a past life. It's karma. This kind of stuff, So, and this is really nice because she was pretty nice about the whole thing because I was pretty obnoxious probably, and she was pretty nice about it. And she listened to me, and finally she basically says, dared me. She says, "Well, if you think so silly, why don't you try it?" And at first I said, "No, I'm not going to do that." She said, they got down. "Oh, are you scared?" Now, you don't want to ask a man if he's scared, because and of course you've had too much, too much to drink and everything. So I finally told her, finally after enough times, "Oh, you're scared? Okay, if you're scared, I understand." Type thing. "Well, you're not scared." So I said, "Okay, I'll do it." But then the next day, after I sobered up a little bit, I says, "I ain't doing this. This is silly. I'm not going to do this." And I basically said, "No, I'm not going to do it." But every time this woman works for the police department. She's also a detective and a psychologist. She's a practicing psychologist also. And I kept running into her. And every time I run into her, she'd always ask you, "Have you made the appointment yet? Have you done it?" And it got to the point where now you hate seeing her. You see her in the hallway, you say, "Oh man, here she is," and you're gonna have to make some excuse. So finally, after enough times, I finally said, "Well, hell with it." I called the number she gave me. I said, "I'll just do it. I'll go there. I'll sit for an hour, look like an idiot. Let her people, I didn't know what hypnotists did. I thought they must swing a watch or an amulet in front of you or something like that. And I thought, well, I'll just let her do that for an hour, but then I'll come back and I'll show her. I'll say, 'See, I told you, none of it worked. It's all baloney. It does not work.'" So anyway, I finally decided to do it. But after then, once I did, I was on the way up to the psychologist. I thought, man, I was really nervous because for one thing, I really at the time thought, well, I'm much too strong-willed. I can't be. Only weak-minded people could be hypnotized. Somebody who's really strong-willed can't be hypnotized. And I felt pretty confident of that. I thought this is going to be a very uncomfortable hour. I'm going to sit there, and she's going to be saying, "You're sitting sleepy," this kind of thing. I'm not going to be. But fortunately, I was told before I went there that I could bring my own tape recorder and tape if I wanted to. So I did that because I wanted to be able to prove this to Kathy, the psychologist, that, see, I did it. I told you, it's baloney, nothing happened. So I brought my own tape recorder along. So anyway, I'm in the psychologist's office, and she's a very, very, very nice lady. Mary Ellen Griffiths is the lady's name. Just a fine person, very nice lady. And she was maybe very, very comfortable, very gracious, made me feel very comfortable. And I kept waiting for her to, saying, something. I had no idea what they did. I had no idea what they did. So I'm waiting for this stuff to happen. But she didn't. We just talked for a little bit, and she says, "Okay, close your eyes." She says, "Tell me about your college graduation." So she says, "Describe everything you can remember about it to me." So I do that. I describe my college graduation to her. And she said, "Okay, tell me an incident that happened in high school." So I think of something that happened in high school, and I tell her the story, what happened in high school. And she says, "Okay, tell me about junior high." And I could see what she's doing. Every memory was a little younger. And I knew what she's doing. That's pretty obvious. I mean, if you're a police officer, you know about interrogation techniques. You know what people are doing. And I'm watching her. But see, the point of the matter is, I wanted to cooperate. I wanted to do. I had then told myself, I want to do everything she asked me to do because I'm gonna go back to Kathy and say, "See, I did everything and nothing happened. See." So anyway, we started going, and she asked about grade school, and then she asked about what your earliest memories you have. And this went on for 10, 15 minutes, and I'm describing everything to her. And finally she said, "Okay, now, there's a balloon. Can you see a balloon?" Now, actually, I could see a big purple blob, but it was all I knew it was this light coming through the window to my right. I said, "Yeah, I see a purple balloon." And I'm trying to cooperate, be nice. She said, "Okay," she says, "This is a balloon. It's going to take you on a trip." Okie dokie. And I'm trying to be nice, and I'm trying to cooperate. So she says, "All right, get in the balloon with your higher," and she was talking about, I'm talking about you're going to be accompanied by your higher self. And she explained the higher self is a part of my mind that guides me, controls me, will guard me. I couldn't figure what the hell is going to guard me from, but I said, "Okay." She says, "So get in the balloon with your higher self, and you're going for a trip." So I'm trying to be cooperative, and I've imagined this. And she says, "Okay, up you go." She says, "Now, can you see lights down below you?" Now, interesting enough, at the bottom of my eyelids, I could see lights, but I knew it was just glare off the floor. I was sure it was just glare off the floor. And I could see, look all the points of light, but I knew it was, again, you're seeing the purple blob, you're seeing the light through your eyelids, and you're seeing the glare off the floor. So I said, "Okay." So she said, "Okay, now you're going on the balloon." She says, "Now you see the lights down below." I says, "Yes." She says, "Okay, land." Now, I'm trying to be cooperative, but I'm not going to do anything that I can't do. And absolutely nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. She says, "Well, don't you want to land here?" And I says, "Sure." She says, "Okay, take the balloon down." So we went through this, gosh, at least 12 to 15 times. there's a control, pull the control, take it down, and all this, nothing. But I got news, nothing happened. And I knew, and at the time I felt very confident. See, I knew this wasn't going to happen. She wants, I thought at the time, what she wants me to do is imagine. She wants me to imagine this. And that's what's going to be a past life memory, is what I'm imagining. I'm not going to do it. So anyway, we went through, oh gosh, 12. I thought this one must really get aggravated pretty soon, because I'm not quite, but I was going to cooperate, but I wasn't going to do anything that wasn't true. And I simply didn't see anything, but I saw the big purple blob. I thought I could see the little lights down below. That's all I could see. So we went through several minutes of this, of trying to take a balloon down. It wouldn't go and everything. She finally said, okay. She said, this is not a place your soul wants you to stop. She said, let's go somewhere else. She says, your inner self will take you to a mountain. Can you see a mountain? Now, I figured this time, now, I've been sitting on this couch. You know, I talked about all these memories about my high school and college, and I've been talking about the balloon. I've been sitting on the couch with my hands folded, clasped together, and not moving for probably 20, 25 minutes. And my butt was sore, my back was sore, my hands were sore, and I figured there's some reaction in my body, because suddenly, when she said that, I could see a mountain in my mind. And that wasn't a clear picture, just you could see a mountain, kind of a blurry picture of a mountain. She said, can you see a mountain? I said, yeah, I can. I figured just my mind's trying to do anything, get out of here. She said, okay. She says, take the balloon to the mountain. So I said, okay, I'll take the balloon to the mountain. So she says, take the balloon to the mountain. She says, now you land. She says, there's a cabin. Can you see a cabin? And again, I thought, well, my mind is obviously very, very tired. And so I wanted to cooperate because I could see a cabin. But interestingly enough, it was a log cabin, but the logs were going vertically rather than horizontally. I told her that. I've since found out, by the way, I didn't realize this. One of my readers wrote and told me this. This is how the French built their cabins. I didn't know they did that, but the logs went vertically and horizontally. And I told her, I see the cabin and everything. She says, well, go in the cabin. She says, what do you see? Well, I didn't see anything. I said, nothing. There's nothing but darkness inside. And I figured that's because this is her daydream, not mine. That's why I don't see anything. So she's still being very nice. Dr. Griffin's a very nice lady. She says, okay. She says, we'll go out of here. She says, we're going to walk down some steps into the valley. There's a valley down below. Now we're going to walk down. There's 12 steps down this valley. And I'm going to count as you walk down the steps. I'm thinking, okie dokie. So I'm picturing my mind, I'm trying to cooperate, picture myself walking down steps. And she's going 12, 11, 10. And I'm saying, okay. But interesting, when she got to 1, something happened. And it was so startling, I probably would have screamed if I hadn't already lost my breath. And when you got to 1, I was in a valley. Now, I mean, I knew I was still sitting in a chair. I could still feel how hard it was on my rear, and I could feel my hands were going numb. But at the same moment, I was in a valley. And it didn't take me long. I knew what this was. I knew I wasn't as strong as I thought. I'd been hypnotized. Because it was an interesting situation, because you're actually 2 places. You're sitting in a chair, but you're actually in a valley. I mean, because you could look around. You could see the leaves. You could look behind you. You could look up and down. And it was as clear as it is in this room. It was just vividly clear. I could see. And what the really funny part, I thought, it was a breeze blowing, and I could feel a breeze in my face. Now, I'm in a closed office, and I could feel the breeze blowing in my face because I could see the leaves moving. Now, I knew what it was. I knew what it was. I said, Bob, you've been hypnotized. Bottom line, you've been hypnotized. That's all this is. And but it was pretty fascinating. I was pretty fascinating about it. But we still see, anyway, she says, okay, so we go through this valley. And I didn't realize till later on when I got back home and listened to the tape, I hadn't remembered her saying this. She had told me, I want to take you back to the very first life you lived on this earth. And I didn't remember her saying that till I got home and listened to the tape again. And she asked me, she said, look down, what are you wearing? I looked down, I see a couple of real hairy, nasty-looking, dirty feet and some kind of nasty, really nasty, matted fur. I thought, oh, this is funny. But, you think, well, you know what cavemen look like. Now, this is something you picked up in movies or the Flintstones or something, So I didn't think too much about it. So I said, so we go through this. We go through this life, and it's very fascinating. I must admit, I was fascinated by the whole thing because I knew what it was. This is my mind playing tricks on me. But it's sort of like virtual reality. I mean, you can do a virtual reality. It looks real. It looks like you're someplace you do, but it's not. It's just a trick being played on you. You're not. If you ever played a virtual reality game, you know that it seems like you're somewhere else, but you're really not. And that's what I thought. I thought, well, this is really neat. This is fun. I mean, it's beautiful because I'd never seen anything. So the thing that amazed me was the clarity. It was so clear I could see, just as clear as I could right now. And that was the amazing part. And I'm walking along, and you can feel things in this thing. You can actually feel the breeze. You can feel the heat of the sun, which is really fascinating because you're in an office, a dark office at that. But the really interesting part is we're walking along. I'm describing the valley to her. I'm walking along a brook, and I'm describing it to her. And I'm carrying a big. It's not a club. It's a piece of a tree limb. I'm carrying a piece of tree limb in my hand, big heavy piece of tree limb in my hand. And I'm still thinking, well, this is something, Bob. You know what cavemen look like. This is all you're doing. You're just imagining what you're imagining for her. But suddenly she says, do you know where you live? And it was really funny because it was suddenly like there was another part of my mind that was controlling it rather than my conscious mind. Because suddenly I looked upside a hill and I recognized where I lived. Now, Bob Stowe didn't recognize it. I had no idea. The body I was in at the moment recognized it. It was really a funny feeling because it's like parts of your mind are controlling you that you don't know about. And it was really funny because I looked up and I recognized it. This is where I've lived my whole life. There's a cave up inside the hill where I've lived my whole life. But Bob Snow had never been to this valley, didn't know this, but another part did. And more than that, I finally started saying things, and it was like a little door in the back of your mind opened up, and thoughts and words come out, and they go right past your mind onto your lips. And you'd say things that you know you're going to say. And I said, that's where I live. And I thought, why did I say that? Because I didn't know I was going to say it. And I kept saying things that your conscious mind didn't know you were going to say them until after you'd already said them. You think, what the hell did I say that for? You're like, why did I say that? But I would keep saying things. I said, yes, I know where it's at. So we went through this life. It was very fascinating. She took me to my death. And it was really kind of interesting because I was inside of a body. You're looking through the eyes of this body for most of it. She said, okay, go to your death. Suddenly I found myself floating. I was about 10 feet above the body. And I saw him laying on the cave floor. He's shivering. He's coughing and shivering. He's dying of some kind of something. I don't know what he's dying of, or something. And she said, okay. She says, well, she took me to my death. And she said, okay, go out of the cave. And she said, look up. Do you see anything? And I looked up over the valley. It's a really intensely bright light. She said, go to the light. That's what you need to do. So I thought, well, this is kind of fun. And again, I thought I knew it was just hypnotism, but I thought it's kind of fun too. I mean, there's not, she kept telling me about, you'll be protected. Don't worry about it. The white light will protect you. And I thought, what's to be protected from? This is all, just, it's a mind trick, but it's a fun mind trick. It really was. It's kind of like going to an amusement park and find a really, really neat ride that isn't real. I mean, if you go down to Disney World in Florida, the haunted castles aren't really ghosts. They sure look like ghosts, and it's well done. Well, I thought that's all this was. This is not real, but it sure is fascinating. So anyway, we go to my death. And she says, okay. She says, what'd you learn by this life? And the thing I told her, and again, it come on my lips I didn't know I was going to say it. I says, I was all alone. I didn't have anybody. I lived by myself my whole life. I didn't have anyone. I said, that was a lesson I learned in this life, is that you're not supposed to be alone. You're supposed to have someone. And again, I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm saying. It's like you're sitting here talking, you think, who the hell's doing this? It's like you feel like one of these dummies, the guy's behind you, he's ventriloquist, and you're talking. Because you don't know you're going to say these things. They just come out of your lips. So anyway, she said, okay. She said, I want you to go to a life where you had someone important to you. So, okay. So all of a sudden, there's like a gray fog for about 2 or 3 seconds. And then suddenly, I see myself, I'm on a street. It's a city street. But I could tell it wasn't today. It was like it was the 19th century because I could see horses pulling carriages and street lights were the gas street lights. And I look, she said, okay. She says, where you at? And I just drive the street to her. I said, it's a street. I said, it looks like the late 19th century because I can see horse pull carriages and I can see gas lights. She said, okay, what are you wearing? I looked down. I said, well, I'm wearing a fancy shirt and a suit, and I got shiny shoes. I said, I have a cane. But I said, it's not a cane because I'm an old man. It's a fancy walking stick. She said, okay, where are you going? I said, I'm going to meet someone. Again, I'm saying this stuff not knowing what the hell's going on because my mind's just sitting around. Bob Snow is kind of a passive observer of this. You really are. You're just kind of a passive observer, and your mind it's like a runaway horse, just galloping off and talking. She says, okay. I said, I'm going to meet someone. She said, who? I said, it's a woman. So I go, and she said, okay, meet her. So I say woman, and she's in a bright red dress, a very beautiful woman in a bright red dress. And she said, okay, you met her, where are you going? I said, we're going to stop at a cafe. She said, okay. So what do you do? She says, what do you order? I said, she orders some kind of special water. I order a glass of wine. So, okay. She says, okay, now, she says, go to the next significant event in this life. So in between the things, and everything, sometimes between regression, sometimes it take a few seconds for something to happen. Sometimes you just flash to it. Wisdom here, it took a few seconds. Next thing I know, it's about 4 or 5 years later, and this lady and I are married, and we're in a hallway of an apartment building. We're arguing. And she said, what are you arguing about? I said, we're arguing about money. I said, okay. She said, what do you do? I said, well, I leave, and I walk down the hall, and I go into a room. And then she said, describe the room to me. I said, well, it's got a whole wall of windows and a lot of skylights. I said, it's an artist studio. I said, I'm an artist. And again, I thought, okay. And again, I'm just watching this and this is really neat. I said, okay. It's full of skylight. Now, and all of a sudden I stopped. And I said, it came out of me, just bubbled up me. That's like bubbles coming to the surface. I said, my name is Jack. I thought, whoever Jack is, okay. She said, well, describe the studio to me. I said, okay. I said, the windows and the skylights. I said, there's dozens and dozens of paintings hanging around here, unsold paintings hanging around here. She said, okay. And again, she says, okay, now go to the next scene. Go in your life. Next report and scene. So I go to the next scene, and I'm at a party. But I'm the center of this party. Everybody's congratulating me, everybody's patting me on the back, congratulating me. And the interesting part about being in regression is whatever body you're in, not only you can feel the temperature and the heat and all that, you can feel what emotions this person was feeling. And I can feel this person was intensely happy. This was probably the most important day, one of the most important days of his life. I mean, how often do you ever feel that in your life? I mean, just it's like the birth of a child or something like that. You're just intensely happy. This was one of his supreme moments of his life. And I was at this party, and Dr. Rip kept saying, after I described the party to her, she kept saying, well, let's go to the next scene. I wouldn't leave. Because you think about it, how many times in your life have you ever experienced intense happiness? Not that often. And this was really, it was just like a euphoric type feeling. And she kept saying, hey, we got to go. And I didn't want to leave. But finally I did, because again, it was something really nice. It was really neat. She said, okay, go to the next important scene in your life. So I come to the next thing, I'm in a garden. And it's not a garden, it's a huge garden. It looks like miles of hedges and flowers everywhere. And I'm walking through, but now, rather than be happy, I'm very depressed. And I don't know what I'm depressed about, of course, but I'm walking through the garden, I'm not noticing any of the flowers, the hedges, or how beautiful it is. I'm walking along and depressed. So finally, like in most lives, the most significant part of your life is your death. It's usually the most significant because it basically the culmination of everything happens. She says, go to your death. She says, go to your death and tell me what you learned from this life. And again, I'm talking, not knowing what I'm going to say. And I says, we should have children. She says, my wife and I didn't have any children. We should have had children. She said, okay, now die and go and pass up to the light. So I saw myself die, and I saw myself pass up through a roof of this building I was in. And you think, well, what does this mean? Ghosts always do that, don't they? I mean, can't ghosts walk through walls? I mean, again, I'm not thinking this is anything with just imagination. This stuff I'm making up, because that's what ghosts do. They go through walls. So anyway, I pass up through this, and I see it's nighttime, and I'm over a huge city. This city just lights the ground for miles around. It's a huge, huge city. And she said, okay, now, she said, go up into the light. But again, I didn't. For some reason, I didn't want to do that. Because again, it seems like whenever you die, in regression, there's always a really intensely bright light above you. You're supposed to go to it. But I didn't. Instead, I found myself flying through some woods. And I could tell, but the other thing, when you're in a body, you can feel the temperature and everything. When you're in the spirit thing, you can't. But I could tell it looked like a cold night, because it looked like a cold, blustery night. But it wasn't winter, because all the trees still had leaves. It looked like a really cold fall night. So anyway, the next moment, I'm at some mansion somewhere, and I'm on the second or third floor. I'm floating outside the window, looking in a window. And there's a fireplace with a huge roaring fire. And I say, that's one of my paintings over the fireplace. I can see one of my paintings over the fireplace. I said, people must have really liked it, because they didn't like me, but they liked my painting because they put it above the fireplace. And she asked me to describe the painting to her. It looked like a still life. It was a bottle with fruit, a real big sun, and all kind of bright colors in it. And so again, she's trying to get me going to light, and I'm still wanting to watch this painting. It was just something apparently I felt like I had to do. I had to see this before I went. So she finally talked me into leaving, to go into the light. And I went to another life, which it was a life back in ancient Greece. And again, it's one of those things that was interesting, but it's not anything you would know from reading history about what happened in Greece and all this. So after that life, she said, okay, Bob, I want you to go back to the most recent life you lived before this one. She said, go back to your most recent life. I says, okay. So again, I felt there was like a little gray fog, and suddenly I'm back into a body again. I know immediately it's the painter. I'm back into the painter. So apparently I figured this must have been the one most previous to my present one. But I'm in my studio, and I look down, I have a paintbrush in my hand, and I'm painting a portrait. Now the really funny part was, the lady I was painting was a hunchback. Now I thought at the time how silly this is. Now really, why would a woman who had a hunchback want her portrait painted? I thought, this is why I said, Bob, this is all jumbled stuff. You're making up in your mind. You're thinking you're painting, you're doing this. This is something you're making up. But the woman sitting there was a hunchback, and I was painting her portrait. I could see the painting was just about done. But I could see myself, I was putting the last touches on the painting. But anyway, Dr. Ripson says, okay, you're painting. He says, do you like painting? I said, I hate painting portraits. I hate it. He says, I hate it, but I have to, because I need the money. And you can feel the emotions a person has. And I could feel for this person, the need for money was just desperate. Because I said it to her probably 10, 12 times, that I hate painting portraits, I need the money. I really, really need the money. I hate it. She said, okay. So anyway, I watched myself paint the portrait for a couple minutes. She said, okay, go to the next important scene in your life. So the next scene, I'm in a building somewhere, and now I can begin to feel emotion. This person is really angry. The body of man person is really angry. He's arguing with someone about his painting, one of his paintings, that the lighting is poor on his painting, that the lighting isn't right. He's having a really intense argument with someone. She said, okay. He says, go to the next scene in your life. So the next scene I go, I'm in a garden somewhere. I don't know. At first I don't know where I'm at. I'm in a garden. I hear piano music coming from inside the house. And she says, okay, walk in the house and see who's playing the piano. I said, okay. So I walk inside, and my wife is there. And she's sitting at the piano in a very yellow dress, and she's playing the piano for people. And she says, do you know where you're at? And again, my mind just spoke up on its own. They'd ask me what I wanted to say. Yeah, I said, we're in France. Okay. She said, okay, now go to the next scene. Well, again, I went a little gray fog. And when I was there, before I get to the next scene, I suddenly felt this emotion well upon me. And I really wanted to cry. And you think, this is silly. Cry about what? But I was so sad I wanted to cry. I was just so overwhelmed with grief. I said, she died of a blood clot. They said she died of a blood clot. Now, I don't know if I was talking about my wife or who, but I know it was some woman who was tremendously important to who this person was, just tremendously important to her. I said, they said she died of a blood clot. Right after I said that recorder I brought along snapped off, and I opened my eyes. Now, anybody's been hypnosis knows you open your eyes, it's pretty well over with. I opened my eyes, and it was over. Now I felt really stupid, Because now you're back in control of yourself again. You realize, boy, you sit here, you babble like an idiot. And I'm thinking, man, oh man, oh man. Now, I had this great plan how I was going to show Kathy how silly all this stuff was. And now I'd sit there for the last half hour babbling like a fool. And now, you don't know what to do. Yeah, you don't want to all I want to do is just get out of the office. I just want to write this lady a check and get out of there and leave. But of course, she's not going to do that. She wants to say, well, do you see how this all applies to your life today? And I really couldn't at the moment. She said, don't you see how these things you experience affect your life today? No, I'm just trying to get out of there. I'm just mumbling about, I just want to get out of here. So I write her a check and I get out of there. But the problem is that there was something, I couldn't get the feeling of this time. I tried to tell myself, okay, Bob, this is nothing. This is just hypnosis. It was just your mind bring up old memories from this past, this life, something you've seen years ago. You just simply brought them up yourself because people realize your subconscious mind never forgets anything. Everything you do is recorded there, but you don't really have access to it usually unless you're under hypnosis or dreams. And I thought that's all it was, Bob. You've seen this valley somewhere before. You've seen these paintings in a book or somewhere before. You simply regurgitate this, you reorder them and regurgitate a story to make her happy because obviously you're not as strong as you thought and you want to do what the psychic, because when you're in hypnosis, of course, you're very susceptible to suggestion. And I thought she suggested make a story. You did. That's all there is to it. Forget it, Bob. But I couldn't. For some reason, I couldn't get the pictures out of my mind. The picture of the two paintings. Because when I closed my eyes, I could still see them just as clear as I would right then. And for months and months afterwards, if I just closed my eyes, I could see both paintings, see every brush stroke of both paintings. It was so clear. But I kept telling myself, just forget it, Bob. I drove home, just forget about it. And I did call the psychologist store. Well, it was interesting, and I must admit, maybe I can see how people might think it's past life. I wouldn't admit I was wrong, needless to say. But I told her, well, okay, maybe people think it, but I don't really think it's so. But again, I just tried to forget about it. But I found I couldn't. For the next month or so, I couldn't get it in my mind. I would think about it all the time. And if I closed my eyes, I could see the paintings. And I started dreaming about it. I started dreaming about this all the time, about the regression sessions. It's just all the time. And I find myself thinking about it all the time. And it got to worry me a little bit because being a police officer, I've been a police officer for 32 years, you deal with people now and then who have obsessions. And you find people who have obsessions can hurt themselves or other people. Or it basically messes their life up really badly. If you have a really deep obsession with something, it can really mess up your life. And you need to get rid of it. And I could see after a month or two, I was obsessed by this. I just couldn't get it in my mind. I kept thinking about it all the time, constantly. So finally I says, well, okay, Bob, what you need to do, you need to find one of these two paintings. You find one of the two paintings, you remember, that's where I saw it at. I saw it, in this gallery, or I saw it in this art book, Now, you remember everything. So that's what you do. So being a detective, I developed a plan for how to do this. And you just can't do it. If anybody knows about investigative work, you just can't just say, I'll just go investigate something. You have to have a plan. You have to have something to do. So what I did is I said, well, what I'll do, I'll go to the public library. I'll get in their art book collection. I'll start going through their books until I find one. These had to be, because I've never been that involved in art or that interested in art that I know anything. I said it had to be at least famous or semi-famous paintings of a famous artist that I've seen sometime during a history course or something like that. And I'd find them. Once I found them, I remember where I've seen all this stuff. Then I remember, I heard about this artist in this history class, or I saw it somewhere before. So I developed this plan. I'd go there, and so I got me a yellow legal pad. I put A on the first sheet, B on the second, and so forth. That way I could list the books. That way I wouldn't double back. And otherwise you'll end up doubling back, doing the same books over and over. So I made a list of every book I read. I figured this investigation would take me maybe a couple hours, and I'd find them. I figured they had to be pretty famous paintings, and I figured a couple hours I'd find them. Well, about 3 months later, after I'd gone through every book in the library, I hadn't found either painting. And it was kind of bugging me because I thought, well, you have to have seen them somewhere, Bob. And I thought, well, maybe my parameters are too short because I had limited myself to 19th century painters. I figured that's what I'd seen. I thought, well, maybe, Bob, you made that up. That's not really true. So I went back and did 18th and 20th century painters too. I thought maybe you just had made your parameters too tight on this investigation. So I went back for a couple months and did that. And again, didn't find anything. Didn't find anything. So I thought, wait a minute, Bob. Maybe your ego's got in your way. Maybe you think since you were a painter in your past life, you had to be a famous painter. Maybe this guy wasn't. Maybe this is a real minor painting by a minor painter, and for that reason, when you saw it, you immediately forgot it because, again, it was just a minor person who didn't really amount to anything. So I thought, well, maybe you need to look at some books of some minor painters. And I thought, well, I'll try that. The reason what kept me going is, like I said, I've been a police officer for 32 years, and you get a certain pride in your work. And this should have been a really simple investigation. It should have been a real, almost what we call a check-off. A check-off investigation when you just do a couple things and you're done. There's nothing to it. Well, this wasn't a check-off. And it got to the point where it was kind of a challenge to my investigative skills. Now, I could say, gee, I failed at a very easy investigation, or I could keep at it. And you find, a lot of really, really good police work is done by not giving up, by just keep pounding at things, keep digging, and you'll find it. Really good detectives never give up on things like this. You just keep digging and digging, because eventually you're looking for that one clue that'll solve the case, and quite often you'll find it if you dig enough. And this turned out to be a case where I wasn't going to admit that I couldn't do it. I wasn't going to admit that this case fooled me, because also, if I did that, then I always thought, well, you'll never really know, Bob. Because I was convinced still that this was just either my imagination along with the memories making us all up. But I thought, you can't prove this to yourself if you don't do this. So anyway, that's why I kept looking. And I went through all the books. If I went through every book in the Indianapolis Public Library, by the way, I didn't know, has hundreds and hundreds of art books. I had no idea how many they got. I went through every one of them. Didn't find a one. So then I had an idea about maybe I need to go to a couple of bookstores who have newer books and different books. I went to Barnes & Noble. I went to B. Dalton, Half Price Books. And people wondered what the hell I was doing there, because I'd go there and look through all the books, didn't buy a thing. I know what they were, what I was doing there. I went through all of them, didn't find anything. Then I had an idea that maybe I need to talk to some people, art dealers and art galleries. I could find out, describe the paintings to them, but they didn't know where they were at. So I went and got a map of Indianapolis and Yellow Pages and circled all the art galleries and art dealers in Indianapolis. I thought, well, if you don't, it's easier to start visiting if you don't have to worry about doubling back all the time. So, but I found a really interesting thing about the art world. This is kind of interesting. Is there is no central registry of paintings in America. In other words, if you want a certain painting by a certain person, unless it's a Renoir or a Van Gogh, there's nowhere to find it. What you have to do is start calling art dealers. You call an art dealer, so you know who's got a John Smith painting. And I thought you'll find what the problem is art world is about 20 years behind technology, and they're being dragged kicking and screaming into it. Most artists feel that it's not artistic to be technologically astute, and so they don't really like computer databases. They're finally being dragged into it. But I found out, because I went to talk to dozens of art dealers, and they all told me the same thing. If you don't know where this is at, even if you knew, I didn't know the artist's name, say, at the time. I didn't know the name of the painting, the artist's name. All I had was a description of the paintings. He said, there's no way you can find them. He said, there's no way you can find them. He said, there is no way, unless you know the artist himself and who carries this artist and the painting, there's no way you'll find it. I thought, well, maybe not. So what I said, well, Bob, you can't find the painting. Maybe you need to find out what happened to you. Because I didn't know that much about regressive hypnosis other than experiencing it. So I went and got about a dozen books on it and read all the books on it to see what happened to me. And I found really something kind of interesting when I started reading this book, the books on hypnotic regression. I found that practically everybody reports doing the same things I did when they die. They have various things in their past life I thought kind of fascinating. They wonder how people could do that, how everybody could have the same experiences when you're hypnotized. But again, I didn't think, it was just, I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. So anyway, I read the books, but it didn't help me too much. I even went to a New Age store in Indianapolis, which is really kind of, needless to say, I went incognito. I didn't tell them who I was. But I went there, and I thought, well, maybe I need another different viewpoint. So I got some books there on past lives and all that, and I even got some tapes on self-hypnosis or regression. And I tried those one time, and I tried to self-hypnotize myself, and believe me, that ain't easy. And I don't know if it can be, because I tried, and I finally, twice, I was able to feel myself going in to the same state I've been in Dr. Griffith's office, but it only lasted 2 or 3 seconds. And when I do it, suddenly I get this vision. I get this number, 1917. It comes almost like an explosion, a 1917, and pop, and you'd be out of it. Then you're back. And it took me 20 minutes to get there. And I did that twice. And you go through all this. I found a couple of tapes that went to a lot of imagery like Dr. Griffith had done. Imagine this, imagine that type thing. And twice I got to the state where I could feel myself going like I had before. And both times I used to say 1917, then pop, I was out. So finally, this had been almost a year. And finally, you can be the best police officer in the world. You can be the best homicide detective, best police officer in the world. Occasionally, there are cases you can't solve. There are murder cases we can't solve. There's simply, you haven't got enough evidence. You haven't got a clue how to do it. And so you basically have to give up. What we do in the police department, you inactivate the case. What this means is the case is not being worked on. Now, it's not closed. We don't consider a murder case is never closed unless the person is convicted. But it's inactive, which means it's sitting there not doing anything, waiting for more evidence to come along. Because occasionally, we have cases where it can be 10, 12 years old, all of a sudden you'll get new evidence, and then you reactivate the case. And I thought, well, this case is just going to be deactivated unless I find some information. And I thought, what's the chances? I thought, well, Bob, you're just going to have to go to your grave always wondering what the hell this was. It's not going to make a difference. Well, a couple months after I'd given up, but I never stopped thinking about it. That was the bad part. I never could stop thinking about this stuff. I think about it all the time. I dream probably 3 days out of the week. I'd have a dream about the regression or about past life as an artist. I'd see myself and my brother at an art at a studio together or at a retreat together as painters. I would see myself in the afterlife talking to spirits about my lives and things. And it was just really kind of spooky because I couldn't get it out of my mind. It drove me crazy. I couldn't. And if you'd sit and think of somewhere, if you'd see a movie or somewhere took any place in any part other than the 20th century, you'd think about it. And sometimes you just sit there and it'd come in your mind, just think about it for no reason at all. But I realized there's nothing I could do. I couldn't. I don't know who the artist was. All I think I had to go on was 2 paintings I'd seen. I had no other clues. So basically, I said, Bob, you got to give up. Just get it out of your mind. But it wouldn't. So a couple months after this, it's coming on my wife and I's anniversary, and we're going to. We want to go on a trip somewhere, and she called me one day and says, "Let's go to New Orleans for our anniversary." Now I thought, good idea. Neither one had been to New Orleans. It's like a fun trip. So we said, okay. So we made plans with New Orleans. Now anybody from New Orleans knows the French Quarter is a lot of fun, nice, fun place. A lot of bars, a lot of things to do. And we went down there. We did. My wife, by the way, is a real history buff. So, boy, New Orleans. She drugged me all around New Orleans. Because everything, you got the battlefield of 1812. You got all these antebellum homes, and she drugged me everywhere. But anyway, the last day we were there, our plane didn't leave till the evening. And I told her, well, we'd been going to the French Quarter to the nightclubs at nighttime. I noticed when we go there, it'd be evening. There were all kind of neat shops in there, but they were closed that time. I said, let's go window shopping today. Because they had some beautiful antique stores down there and some beautiful, neat stuff down there. So we did that. We decided to go down there shopping. And anyway, so we were down there. We're looking at antique stores, and there's a bunch of history memorabilia stores, which she spent a fortune at. And anyway, there's a street there called Royal Street. Anybody's been to New Orleans on Royal Street has a lot of art galleries on it. So we went down to, we were on Royal Street, and we were again looking through art galleries. They had some beautiful, by the way, they had some beautiful paintings down there, some expensive and beautiful paintings there. And we're looking there, and they had some, like I said, some fine paintings. So we were walking down, going one art gallery after another, just looking. Again, I'm not planning on buying anything because the cheapest thing is more than I'd want to spend. But anyway, we finally get down to Royal Street. I noticed as we're going down to the street, we're getting down to the end of the street. The galleries are getting kind of smaller, much smaller. The paintings are getting much more inexpensive, and I don't know any of the artists that's that bad. So we finally get to a little bitty art gallery down the end of Royal Street, and it says modern art on the second floor. My wife's always liked modern art. I've never liked modern art. I was always like modern art's like free verse poetry. It's kind of like trying to create art without any work. I know a lot of people, poets, would disagree with me, but being a writer, that's the way I feel. But anyway, I don't care for modern art. I don't care for Impressionism or this, Cubism or anything. But anyway, my wife does. So she went to the second floor. So I'm walking along the first floor, just looking at the paintings, just kind of spend my time. And I'm walking along the wall, looking, and I don't recognize any of these artists. I don't recognize any paintings. And there's a portrait on an easel in the corner. And I'm walking by, and I glance at it, and I start to walk by. And one time, years ago, I grabbed onto a wire, not knowing it was a live wire. That's how I felt then. I stood there, there's a shock, the electricity freezing your spot. It was the portrait of the hunchback woman. Now, at the moment, when things like this happen to you, you don't know what to do. You think being a police officer with all your experience and training, you know what to do. I didn't have a clue what to do. Because things like this happen in the X-Files, and they happen, all these movies and things like this. But in real life, things like this don't happen to people. They just don't happen. That's why I kept telling myself, there's something wrong. Because I thought, no, what's the odds that you could just stumble and you could happen to go to New Orleans at this time in an art gallery when they just happen to have this painting on display? No. Because let me tell you something about coincidences. Police officers don't believe in coincidences. Because we most often find, whenever you find a startling coincidence in an investigation, it's not a coincidence. It's usually somebody's made it happen to make it look like a coincidence. But I couldn't see how that could be the case in this. I kept thinking, this is too big a coincidence, Bob. It can't happen. I kept thinking, well, maybe this is the wrong painting. Maybe this is not the painting you think it is. But I closed my eyes, and nope, you could see the painting it, and I could still see that clear. Opened my eyes, and there it was. After doing that enough times, I knew this was the painting. Then I wondered, gee, what if I've had a stroke? Maybe I'm in a hospital somewhere. Well, you're searching for rational explanation. Maybe I'm slobbering myself in a nursing home somewhere or something. I'm not really here. Because you're trying to find a rational explanation of what's going on, because I can't find one. What's the odds of finding this painting like this? So for about 5 minutes, I'm standing there trying to figure some explanation for this. I'm pinching myself thinking, am I really here? Am I not really here? But that's why you have to say, well, okay, Bob, this is realism. You're here. Now, I said, maybe this, okay, he said, well, Bob, be cool, Bob. Now, this is amazing coincidence, but it was this, you've seen this painting somewhere before. The fact you found it twice like this is amazing. But I said, Bob, don't get all, supernatural on yourself. You've seen this painting somewhere in this life, somewhere years ago, you've seen it. And that's all it is. It's just, it's starting coincidence, certainly. So anyway, I'm standing, of course, you stand in front of a painting for 5 minutes. The pretty soon the salesman's going to spot you. He's thinking, hot dog. So he comes over and he says, I bet you're thinking how good it look over your fireplace, aren't you? And I says, no, it really wasn't. Who wants a picture of a hunchback woman over your fireplace? So anyway, I says, well, I don't recognize the artist. I said, who's the artist? He said, the guy's name is Beckwith. He said, hold on a second, I got a little bio on him here. So he went hunting around. He found there's just a little paragraph on him. And I looked at it and immediately found some things that, just kind of skin shock you. I found it was J. Carroll Beckwith. And I remember telling the person my name was Jack. I thought, well, that's just a coincidence. It said he was born 1852, died 1917. And I said, remember the 19th? I said, no, Bob, this is coincidence. And it says, okay. He says, okay. It says, I thought, well, he did live during the 19th century, 1852. I said, well, it's coincidence. And it said in the bio that he'd gone to art school in France. I thought, ooh, And it also said he'd won a number of wars during his life for his paintings. And I remember the party I was at where everybody's congratulating him. I thought, no, Bob, you're getting carried away with this. Now you're letting carry away. So anyways, I wrote down all the information. And I thought, well, I told the guy I'll check back later about buying this. This time I think he wanted like $5,000 as painting. But I found one thing about buying paintings. Buying paintings is like buying a used car. You don't pay what they ask for it. Everything is negotiable type thing. But I wasn't going to pay that kind of money for painting, a hunchback woman that I thought I had seen somewhere. I thought, well, what you do now, Bob, go back to Indianapolis, research J. Carroll Beckwith, then you'll find out. You'll say, that's right. That's where I saw it. I saw it 22 years ago here, something like that. So I get back to Indianapolis and I go to the public library. And I find out one thing about Beckwith is, unless you look in a huge art reference book, he's not there. He simply was not that good he wasn't that good a painter, and he wasn't that famous a painter. He never really painted anything that you'd recognize because there's no paintings of his that are significant. Because he just simply was not that good a painter. But anyway, I found out when I went through the public library, I couldn't hardly find any information at all, just a few little scant mentions here and there about him, which kind of disturbed me because I thought, well, that's all it is. How can you know all these things about him? So the lady at the library says, why don't you go up to the art museum library? So they have a much bigger collection than we do. They can have stuff. So I thought, that's a good idea. So I went up to the art museum in Indianapolis on the north side. I went up there, and the lady there was very, very quiet, very, very nice, very cooperative, and she says, yeah, we can find some stuff for you. So she went through, and she found some stuff for me. She found much more than they had at the public library. Probably, if you put it all together, it's probably a page, if you put it all together, what you found. But I found mostly as in reference to other artists, that it turned out Beckwith was friends with a lot of famous artists. He wasn't famous, but I did find some interesting things. I found that, number one, I remember that I died in the fall. It seemed like I died in the fall. He died October 24th. So that's interesting. I thought, Bob, a fourth of people every year die in the fall, so don't get excited. I see myself come over top of a large city. Well, he died in New York City. I thought, well, a lot of people die in large cities. That don't mean anything. But the starting part, it says that even though he was a portrait painter most of his life, he hated painting portraits. He detested painting portraits, but he needed it because he did it for the money. The only way he could make a living was painting portraits. That kind of, all kinds of. But the only thing, I did find one thing that really gave me an inspiration. I thought, because what I was looking for I wasn't looking for confirmation of this. I was looking for some way to explain it all. I found something. I thought, well, good. I'm showing something's wrong here. Turned out I told everybody his name was Jack, and which everybody knows is a nickname for John. Well, it turns out his name was James. Well, at the moment, I thought, good. That proves it. And unfortunately, since that time, one thing about being a writer is if you let your readers are righteous, send you letters and tell you about things. Well, I had a lady send me a whole bundle of research she'd done. I didn't realize this. During the middle late 1800s, Jack was a nickname not just for John, it was also a nickname for James. I didn't realize that. At the time, I felt kind of exhilarated. I thought, good. I found something wrong. But I also found another thing is that Beckwith hated the name James, just to test the name James. That's why he went by J. Carroll Beckwith. And to the last of his life, he dropped it all together and went by just Carroll Beckwith. And I found a reference that the librarian found for me that said that during his youth, he would never let people call him James. He invented other names for himself. Now, I don't know whether one of the names he invented was Jack or not, but I thought, well, okay, we'll let that one go. But what I found out is, again, she didn't have very much information about Beckwith at all. Just, again, if you put it all together, maybe it was a page. But I found one of them was in a book about John Singer Sargent. Anybody knows anything about American painting knows that John Singer Sargent is probably the most famous American painter, maybe other than Whistler, probably the most famous American painter there is. Turns out he and Beckwith were very good friends. As a matter of fact, they went to the same art school in Paris together, and they were roommates for several years in Paris. So the notation at the bottom of the thing about Sargent said this anecdote came from Carroll Beckwith's diaries that are kept at the National Academy of Design in New York City. So I realized, well, okay, Bob, this is how you're going to prove it, Bob. You're going to get these diaries. Then you can say, okay, this is not right, this is not right. What I was looking for, at the last, I was looking for just find me one or two things about the regression that aren't true. If I could find something that's true, then I'd have to realize this is not a real memory because you wouldn't get the stuff messed up. You got to find one or two things that are not true, then just to feel better about yourself. Then you'll know this is not what you think it is. Because I really didn't want to accept the fact this is supernatural, this is reincarnation, because to do that, you'd have to say, gee, I've been wrong my whole life. People I've snickered at and made fun of were right, I'm the one that's wrong. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to say, gee, I've been the one that people should snicker at. I've been the one that's wrong. And you don't want to do that without solid proof. And so what I was looking for, I had to prove that something is wrong with the regression. That way it showed this is not something wrong here. If I could prove one of the things I'd seen about Beckwith wasn't true, I could feel out better. So what I did is I wrote the National Academy of Design in New York and asked them, are the diaries available? They said no. They said they're so fragile we don't let them out. But he said, but they have been microfilmed, and you can't order them on interlibrary loan from the Archives of American Art. And they found out the reason they kept Beckwith's diaries is Beckwith, during the late 1800s and 1800s, knew everybody. He was good friends with Theodore Roosevelt, Mark Twain, Oscar Wilde, Sarah Bernhardt, John Sargent, Claude Monet. He knew everyone. And he was a very avid diary keeper. And so if you're going to do research on any of these people, and you're looking for anecdotes on them, you pull up people like Beckwith's diary to find little anecdotes on them. Nobody cares about Beckwith, it turns out, because, again, he didn't do anything famous. But they wanted his diaries for that. But I found out his diaries had never been published anywhere. The diaries were never published anywhere you could find other than have to order them, which kind of disturbed me, too, because you think, well, how would I know about him? Because, his diaries had to be special ordered through the Archives of American Art. So anyway, before I got the diaries, I thought, well, I'll order them. I went through and listened to my tape again that I had with Dr. Griffith, and I made a list of all the things that could be proven. I found that all the things that could be proved, disproved. And I found there was 28 things I'd said during the regression, dates, places, cause of death, things about him that I could actually prove or disprove. And I thought, well, this is what you need to do. Make this list. When you see the diaries, find 2 or 3 of them that are wrong. And you know, this is not right. There's something wrong. This is not what you think it is. This is something wrong. So I ordered the diaries. But unfortunately, I found out when I got them that he started keeping his diary at 19 and finished it the day before he died at 65. It was 17,000 pages, which is, as you might imagine, a lot of reading. But I also found it was kind of interesting is that he had a compulsion during his life, interesting enough, to keep a record of himself. Because not only did he keep a diary, he wrote an autobiography of himself, and he also kept a scrapbook. He had 9 scrapbooks completely full of stuff. And it's interesting because in his diary, when you read his diary a number of times, he'll say, I'm nobody, my paintings are not worth anything, I'm nobody will ever care about me. I don't know why I'm doing this. But he had a real compulsion to keep a record of himself. And he did. He kept a record every day of his life, from 19 to 65. He kept a scrapbook of every important moment of his life. And he wrote an autobiography. But as it turned out, the autobiography, he started it in 1917. He lived in Santa Barbara in 1917, and he was really ill the last year of his life. And he only got 23 pages written of it. So it wasn't as significant as I thought. But I picked it up and started reading it. I thought, what I'd do on 17,000 pages, how in the hell, you can't read 17,000 pages. That'd take you a year. I can't do that. I thought, well, what I'll do, I'll read the autobiography first, find 1 or 2 things, and that'd be good. That'd be all you need. Not because I thought, well, for example, I thought, remember that he said I told the psychologist, we didn't have children. My wife couldn't have children. We didn't have children. I thought, well, if Beckwith might have children, that's it. You prove this is not right. Something's wrong here. And another thing, I'd see myself at this sidewalk cafe in the convention drinking wine. I was under the impression that during the late 1800s, the men who drank whiskey, that real men didn't drink wine, that men drink whiskey. I thought, well, that'd be another thing you could prove. If you find that, you'd be fine. So I read his autobiography, and interesting enough, again, it only went up to the age of about 21, so it really didn't tell me so much. So now I thought, well, what the hell are you going to do? What the hell are you going to do? Because I did find one thing in here that the only thing that disturbed me. I was looking through the diaries, and I found for some reason he excerpted about 2 weeks of his diary and typed it. Don't ask me why, but he actually took 2 weeks out of his diary and typed it. And it was about during the summer of 1875. He was at school in Paris. During the summer, he went to Italy, to tour Italy and view their art. And he mentioned that the fact that he'd lived on burnt eggs and wine the whole time he was there. He thinks, So finally, I got to the point where now, Bob, what are you going to do, Bob? So what I finally had to do is, it's one of these things now, you can give up now, but now if you give up, everything's leaning toward the wrong side. So you're going to be the rest of your life thinking that. So what I did is I had his diary, take the microphone, put the hard copy. It filled 2 banker's boxes full. And what I finally did, I was going to prove I had to do this one way. I had to finish it. I just had to finish it one way or the other. I read all 17,000 pages. It took me way over a year. I read all 17,000 pages. It was really kind of interesting because I had this list of 28 things they proved. And I kept checking off, looking for the one thing that was wrong. But the interesting part, of course, is that when I found out that I had discovered that I had stumbled on something obviously very significant, I decided I need to go back to New Orleans and get a picture of that painting. Get a picture of it, or even buy it perhaps if I get it cheap at a reasonable price. So I went back to New Orleans and found a really interesting thing. The store was gone. The store went out of business. Oh, hell. Now what are you going to do? Nobody's going to believe you because you believe there's no such painting. So what police do, and I guess I started canvassing nearby art stores, see if they knew what happened to the artwork. And again, one guy told me, he said, well, yeah, it's obviously consigned to some other art gallery. Where, we don't know, in New Orleans. So I got the phone book New Orleans, wrote down every art gallery in New Orleans, and like all police work do, you start at one, start going through it. And I did finally found the gallery that had the painting. They'd had the painting, they consigned it for me, but unfortunately they sold it. I thought, well, I guess no big deal. Okay, you sold it. That's fine. I don't want to buy it, but I just want a picture of it. And I found really another interesting about the art world. You find this really interesting. Art dealers religiously guard the confidentiality of their clients. They will not tell you anything about the clients. And it stands a good reason if you think about it. Do you want people to know that you have a couple $100,000 worth of artwork in your house or a couple $1 million worth of artwork in your house? No. Or you want, and more than that, you do want the IRS to know you have that kind of stuff. But so he told me, no, I can't. He said, I can't tell you who it is. He said, I'll tell you what you do though. Here's a card. They have a pre-printed card. Say, put your name, address, phone numbers. I'll send it to the person. Tell me you're interested in the painting, and then if they want to, they'll call you. Well, the person never called me. I tried to explain to him what I needed. All I needed was a picture. So I know. He said, I can't tell you anything. He said, just give it to me. I'll send it to him. So now I needed confirmation the painting even existed. Well, interesting enough, reading through Beckwith's diaries, in 1912, he makes 3 mentions of painting a hunchback woman. Interesting enough, when he and his wife at that time lived in a place called the Schuer Hotel, I described my studio having a wall, windows, and skylights. Well, where he was painting hunchback women, he describes it as having a wall, windows, and a skylight. I thought, oh, okay. Now, I remember saying that we didn't have any children, and because my wife couldn't have children. According to his diary, on October 24th, 1888, which is coincidentally 29 years to the day before he died, his wife had a very, very difficult miscarriage. So difficult she couldn't have children after that, and they never had children. I thought, okay. Now, but then also I'd see myself with a walking stick, a very fancy walking stick, and it turns out Beckwith was a cheapskate. Well, this guy was so tight. He would never hire a cab or hire a buggy or anything, so he walked. He did a lot of walking. He lived on 57th Street, New York, and he had a relation who lived at 85th Street. Of course, that's not that far if you knew New York, because the streets are very small. So, but he mentions his diary about half a dozen times about using a walking stick. I thought, okay. Then I remember the scene about me walking into the house and seeing my wife playing a piano, and I thought, well, maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. Well, she did. Turns out they had a piano in their house, and they had a summer home in the Catskills, and she did play the piano for the people. The most important part was about the blood clot. I had said about the blood clot, I said she died of a blood clot. They said she died of a blood clot. And I thought, well, now if some woman very significant to Beckwith didn't die of a blood clot, then this is all phony. And I knew that for Beckwith, there's only 2 people who were important to him. His wife, he just loved her dearly, and his mother, who he really, really loved. His mother was the one who inspired him to be an artist. His mother was a very, very passionate woman. He really just loved her dearly. Well, in his diary on December 5th, 1886, he talks his mother was in church and had a blood clot and died from a stroke. What eventually happened is out of the 28, I was able to find confirmation for 27. I thought, and there comes a time when you're a police officer, let me tell you something about police investigations. Anytime you have a murder case or anything case, police officers start with the assumption that what happened, and you start gathering proof for that. And 99 times you're right. But about 1% of the time, you'll have cases where, man, this didn't happen like you think it happened. I mean, the person you think murdered the person didn't murder him, or it wasn't a murder after all. We've had that happen where you think it's a murder case, not a murder after all. It's an accident or a suicide and what have you. Occasionally, you'll have cases where you have to stop and say, damn, I was wrong. Turn around. And that's what I finally had to do. And it was let me tell you something, that was one of the most difficult things I ever did in my life. Because it's not just to say, I was wrong, that, gee, okay, obviously I carry the memories of Carroll Beckwith in my mind. It's more than that. You have to say, my whole view of the world's been wrong. My whole view of how the world works has been wrong. This is not the way you think of it. My mother was a very, very religious woman, extremely religious. We was a very avid Methodist, and we went to church every Sunday. You had to have a note from the corner not to go to church. Boy, she got you out of bed, I don't care how bad you were. You went to church every Sunday. We went off on Saturdays and Wednesdays. She was an extremely religious woman. I didn't remember anything, all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of church things I went to. I remember anybody ever talking about past lives, ever. So this is something you had to stop and say, gee, everything I believed in is wrong. And it's not an easy thing for a person to do. It really isn't. It isn't easy to say, the world doesn't work the way I think it works. It just doesn't. And then I got to the point, okay, I finally was able to do that. I was able to say, okay, Bob, you were wrong. All the people you laughed at and thought were screwballs, they were right and you were the ones wrong. And that's the hard thing to do, realize that people you were thinking snickering at, they knew something you didn't know. And you just thought you were smart. You weren't smart as you thought you were. Of course, now came the problem is I had all this information. What do you do with it? Now, I've been a writer for a lot of years. Do I want to put this in a book and kind of bare my soul to the world, kind of stand naked in front of the world is what you're doing? Because believe me, this is not something a police captain or a police detective puts forward. You just don't do that. And my wife, believe me, until this day, she didn't want me to do this. She said, don't do it, Bob, don't do it. And I tell you the truth, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I kept having information kind of dumped in my lap. It's like the painting. I mean, what's the odds of this happening, just finding this painting like this? But that wasn't the only time this investigation has happened. I've had several other times in this investigation this happened. For example, one time when I was trying to find the picture of the hunchback woman, one of the art dealers told me, he says, well, we don't have any listings. He said, but how we find things, here's one way we do it. So there's a magazine called American Art Review. American Art Review, if you've ever seen it, the first 3/4 of it is all ads from art galleries showing what paintings they have. And then they have some stories in the back. He said, this is how we do. We advertise our paintings. He handed me a copy. I opened up. The first thing I turned to, well, guess what? It's a Beckwith picture. Now, what's the odds of this happening? And I thought, boy, this is really strange. So I called this guy named Marty Shearer. Marty Shearer has an art dealer up in upstate New York. So I called Marty, figuring he might know where the Hunchback Woman's at, because since he had one Beckwith picture. He said, well, no, I don't. He said, but I do use an expert. Apparently, this is kind of interesting. There's a lot of forgery in art. I had no idea this. Apparently, an awful lot of forgery. Art you think you're buying is actually forgeries. He said, before I buy any painting by an American artist, I have this woman authenticated. She's an expert on American art. She might know. So he gave me her number. So I called her, and we talked a minute, and I said, and she didn't know where it was. She says, you know where Beckwith's scrapbooks are, don't you? No, I didn't. And he'd mentioned a number of times in his diary about keeping scrapbooks. I had no idea, because the National Academy of Design didn't know where they were. They had a diary, they didn't know where they were. Nobody knew where they were. She said, you know where they're at, don't you? Whoops. And again, she told me where they're at. It's one of these things where the information is just dumped in your lap. And you get to say, maybe there's a reason for this, Bob. Maybe there's a reason you want to do this. But even at that, I was really, really nervous about writing this book. I truly, truly was, because I thought this could really, and just between me and you, it has hurt my writing career tremendously. Because like I said, I've had a number of books and articles written all about police work. Since that time, I've had 2 publishers cancel contracts with me when they found out about Beckwith. But again, it's something you have to do eventually. Some things you have to do in life, and this is one thing I felt like I had to do. I figured this information was coming from someone. I don't know what, to be honest with you. I mean, even though my mother was tremendously religious, I'm not as religious as she was. But I don't know what this information come from somewhere really important. And somebody kept giving me this information. I don't know who, but I thought somebody gave me the information for some reason. It's not just for me to keep. It's for me to pass on to someone. So I did publish a book. And the interesting part is I found this kind of interesting about the police department itself. And I was kind of scared. I thought, boy, this is going to be, here you're a captain on the police department. This is going to go really good, isn't it? People are going, but actually the response has been very, very good. I've been amazed. I probably had 50 police officers come to me, and one of these things are, make sure everybody can hear them, such, I've always believed that. I'm really glad you did that. I'm amazed. And actually, the leadership police department, I haven't had any problems at all. Nobody's really, no negative things at all. I'm really stunned. I think more people believe in this than you'd imagine. More people believe in this than you really would imagine. You really do. Or have beliefs that are not the accepted beliefs, but they don't want to tell anybody because they're afraid you don't believe that and they will think something's wrong with them. But after I've done all this, after I wrote the book and you think about it, you look back on everything, you wonder, what does it all mean? What's all the significance of this? And you really kind of think about it. If you look at rebirth and reincarnation, what's the significance of it? Well, for one thing, it certainly makes any ideas of racism or sexism kind of silly, doesn't it? I mean, if you're a sexist or racist, guess what you're going to be next life? Yeah, guess what? I mean, it makes it, you think about it, it really makes it kind of silly. The whole idea of racism and sexism is really foolish, because I can guarantee you, you either will be or have been. I mean, so, it's really kind of foolish. But more than that, I guess it's really important is it answers some questions, for me anyway. Why are we here? What's our purpose? What happens after we die? For me, anyway, that's enough. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions they'd like, please go to the microphone there. They asked me to make sure you go to the microphone.
Did you ever find the painting? You never did find
Nope.
the painting?
No, it hasn't. Now, interesting enough, I'm waiting for enough publicity to come forward about the book, and then you'll find it. Whoever has it will come forward. Interesting enough, the TV program In Search Of is coming in about 2 weeks. Going to film a segment of In Search Of about me and my book, and I figured that might be enough. Someone has this painting. The problem being, of course, now is paintings. And now, if I was you had a painting, and I was to murder you bloodily for that painting is tripled in value. Any kind of publicity for painting, there's no such thing as bad publicity for paintings. There's no such thing. There's only publicity. Mm-hmm. And so any painting, because for my book, I don't know if anybody's got my book or seen it, there's a number of paintings in my book, a number of Beckwith's paintings in my book. The way I got to use most of the paintings is the people would agree to let me put them in my book if I would agree to let them advertise in catalogs that this has been included in this book. A painting in a book doubles. Whatever price it was, if it's been used in a book, you double the price. If I murder you for it, you triple the price. I mean, it's one of those things, there's no such thing as bad publicity for paintings. So I assume once I get enough publicity on this book, yes, it will show up. But I won't be able to buy it because I won't be able to afford it. It just
But there are pictures of the painting that
no,
add,
no,
there's
no,
no
no,
picture. It's
no.
just
That's why I had to.
description.
That's why I had to find the diary, proof that it actually existed. And in his diary in 1912, he makes 3 different mentions about painting a hunchback woman in the studio that I described. But no, it hasn't shown up yet. And that was the one that, again, it will show up. Trust me, if there's enough publicity, it'll show up because it'll all of a sudden be worth a whole lot of money. I mean, I imagine they probably paid $3,000 or $4,000 for it. They'll probably ask $100,000 for it now, and be able to get it.
Thank you.
Have you since done some research on what Professor Ian Stevenson has found on past lives that children have talked about, and where they have more than 28 things, but maybe 35 or 40 or 50 things remembered in a particular life?
Yeah, interesting about Dr. Stevens, of course, he doesn't believe in hypnotic regression. He doesn't believe that that works. All his work is done based from children. If you ever had a young child, you'll know young children sometimes make spontaneous utterances about things that sound like past lives. And he has found a number of children who can remember things. But again, he has some interesting. He don't people realize he works at, I think it's the University of Virginia. I think he's the head of the psychology department, which is pretty. It takes a lot of nerve too to do that kind of thing. He's done a lot of investigation. I have read his books. Yes, I have. Very interesting books. I find it very interesting. He does not believe in hypnotic regression because he, like me, starting off with, he thought it was basically just simple-minded, weak-minded people making up stories.
Yeah, I think he feels it might hurt his credibility a little bit.
Yes, I do. But he has some very interesting research, by the way, on children who have remembered past lives, and he was able to prove a number of things about them.
Enjoyed it very much, Mr. Scott. Snow.
Snow,
Yes,
just like the stuff that falls.
thank you. Did you ever find your still life that you saw over the
No.
fireplace?
You know, what's the interesting thing about Beckwith, if you read his diaries, he's paying well over 1,000 paintings. They only know where about 50 of them are at. The rest of them all been destroyed. They've been destroyed or painted over. I mean, the point of the matter, when he died, his wife sold like 300 some paintings for $6,000. Now you figure that's only $20 a painting. So most of them bought the frames and the canvas and painted over them. He wasn't, basically, Beckwith was not that good a painter. He simply wasn't. He was a mediocre painter at best. And so his paintings have never really lasted that long. A few of them have, but they only about 50 of the 1,000 are at. And so most of them have been either destroyed or thrown away or painted over. So it's tremendously difficult to locate his paintings.
It's very interesting that you were both so meticulous about keeping records and writing things down.
He was really almost compulsive about it too. He really was. He had to keep a record of everything he did. He didn't throw away anything. He kept records of hotel bills. He would keep a record in his diary of every nickel he spent, every nickel.
Enjoyed your story very much. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing all that. I'm your Mrs. Griffith.
Oh.
In a sense, I've done hypnotic regression work as a psychotherapist for 17 years now, and there have been, at least several thousand past life regressions that have come through. And so I'm one of those people who can accept that we all do have, I imagine most of us have been here for many, many lifetimes. Do you have any kind of extrapolations from your experience that would apply to humanity, to all of us?
You know, therein comes part of the shortcomings of my life, is I'm a cop. And that's all I do. I'm a cop. I'm not really a philosopher or theologian. And so people have asked me this kind of thing. What does this all mean? I don't really know. I mean, to me, that's not part of my job. My job is as a police officer, detective. And I did my job. My job was to find proof for this. And I really believe that. That was my job in this life, to find this and find, as Beckwith's job was to keep a record of himself, a complete, total record of himself. But as for theological, philosophical implications, I don't have a clue. I really don't. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can make them out of them. I really can't because, again, I'm not a philosopher or theologian, just a cop.
Right,
And I do what cops do, which is investigate things.
Well, and that's a terrific contribution. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm wondering what you think of the possibility that Carroll Beckwith is resonating with you mentally from the spirit dimension and trying to make himself known.
You know, it's kind of interesting because there's a part I didn't talk about, I didn't have time to talk about it, is he's buried in New York City. Outside New York, he's actually buried in Valhalla, New York, which is a suburb of New York City. And I'm in New York City, you might do some research. You got to go. I mean, the man's there, the grave's there, you got to go. And I've been a police officer 32 years, and when I first come on, you go into a lot of situations where you are scared. I mean, you're going to a warehouse, a dark warehouse, looking for people that are in there. You're going to a house where somebody's been hurt and the guy's hiding his house with a gun. You're scared, okay? I mean, you feel your heart's a thumping, your hands are tingling, your legs are shaking. And that's how I felt walk toward the grave. And this is silly, because I thought, what's so silly, Bob? Why were you scared? I mean, there's no spirit there. The spirit there is here. He's not there. I was so frightened. I was so frightened. I was afraid I might have a heart attack. My heart was beating so hard I was shaking. And I talked to another person at a conference I spoke at last year, and that's what he said. He says, basically, as you're remembering Beckwith's death, that he died of a heart attack, and you're simply reliving his death there at the grave. He says he's resonating with you at the grave. And you say, I beat feet out of there. I saw the grave, but I left. I didn't hang around very long. But again, all these theological and philosophical questions are really beyond me. It's not part of my training. It's really not. And again, I never have dealt that deeply into that sort of thing. Again, I do police work. I do investigation, and that's what I did. But again, if you read my book, you'll see the last sentence. It's what I basically say. I'll leave the implications to the philosophers and theologians. Let them decide what it all means. I don't know. Here's what I found. You decide what it all means, because it's really beyond my forte to be able to say that.
Thank you.